Daniel almost signed the papers because he was tired. Not angry tired. Older than that, the kind that settles into people after years of being treated like a temporary guest inside their own family. The paperwork sat beside the salt shaker on the kitchen table. His father had arranged it neatly, corners squared, like it mattered more than the conversation itself. Outside the window, late March rain flattened the fields into dark strips of mud and old stalks. "We already agreed to the offer," his father said. "This just clears things up." Daniel looked at the first page without reading it. His mother leaned against the counter with crossed arms. Calm, almost amused by his hesitation. "You should be grateful, honestly," she said. "Most people your age get nothing." Then his father slid the pen toward him. "Sign and stop acting entitled." A small silence followed that, not dramatic, just familiar. Daniel had grown up learning that every disagreement became evidence of selfishness. If he questioned something, he was difficult. If he pulled away, he was ungrateful. Eventually he learned silence kept meals shorter. His mother gave a thin smile. "You don't own anything here." That was the sentence that stayed with him, not because it hurt. Because of how quickly she said it, like she'd rehearsed it. Daniel set the pen down carefully, stood, grabbed his keys, and left before either of them could reinterpret his silence for him. The county clerk's office smelled like old paper and copier toner. He almost turned around twice before reaching the desk. "I just need the deed history on the Mercer farm," he said, "and probate records for Walter Mercer." The clerk nodded routinely and disappeared into the back. Daniel expected nothing. Maybe that was why he stayed calm. When she returned, she carried a thin stack of printouts and an older archive folder with faded county stamps across the top. She sat down, scanning something on her monitor, then paused. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Hold on." She opened the archive folder more carefully this time. Inside were scanned documents with uneven signatures and handwritten filing notes. One page carried a label. "Will." The clerk's expression shifted in a way professionals try to hide. "You said Walter Mercer was your grandfather?" Daniel nodded. She lowered her voice instinctively. This was never formally filed through probate. He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means..." She hesitated. "The transfer after his death may not have been completed correctly." She turned the monitor slightly toward him. The will was short. Simple. But one paragraph had been underlined in blue decades earlier. The farmland and residence were to remain jointly inherited between Daniel's father and any surviving direct issue residing or contributing labor to the property at the time of death. Daniel read it twice. Then a third time. The clerk leaned closer. "If this language was never resolved legally, your parents may not have had clear authority to sell without notifying additional heirs." The room suddenly felt too quiet, not triumphant. Wrong, like someone had lifted a floorboard in a house he grew up in. Over the next week, everything slowed down. The developer postponed closing pending title clarification. An estate attorney explained the missing probate process in careful, neutral language. Daniel listened while staring at legal pads he barely understood. "What happens now?" he asked. The attorney folded his hands. "Now," he said, "everyone has to formally establish ownership." Everyone. Daniel realized nobody in his family had ever used that word around him before. The first phone call from his father came that night. "You went to the county?" "Yes." A long pause. "You should've talked to me first." Daniel almost laughed at that. His mother left a voicemail later, tight with controlled anger. "You're creating problems over paperwork your grandfather never cared about." But that wasn't entirely true anymore, was it? Because someone had cared enough to write the will. And someone else had cared enough not to file it. Weeks passed in fluorescent offices and conference rooms where nobody raised their voice. That was the strange part. The real shift in power happened quietly. Lawyers interrupted his father mid-sentence to clarify facts. Developers asked Daniel direct questions. Documents once kept from him were suddenly copied to his inbox automatically. His parents stopped speaking to him like a child the moment professionals entered the room. That hurt more than the original betrayal. One evening, Daniel walked the property alone while negotiations stalled. The barn leaned slightly east now. The fencing near the creek had collapsed years ago. He could still remember repairing it beside his grandfather during cold mornings before school, both of them working mostly in silence. Back then, Daniel thought silence meant peace. Now he understood silence could also mean avoidance. In the end, there was no dramatic victory, no courtroom speech, no collapse. The final agreement reduced the developer's access to the land. Part of the acreage would remain protected under conservation restrictions tied to the settlement. Everyone received less money because of the delay and restructuring, including Daniel. His mother treated the outcome like sabotage. His father treated it like weather. Unfortunate, but unavoidable. Daniel signed the final documents at the county office 3 months later, properly filed this time. As he stood to leave, he noticed the same clerk from that first afternoon organizing folders nearby. She recognized him immediately but only gave a small nod, professional, respectful. Outside, his father lingered near the parking lot. For a second it looked like he might finally say something honest. Instead, he shoved his hands into his coat pockets and stared toward the road. Daniel waited. Nothing came. So he got into his truck and drove home past the edge of the farm, where survey flags already pushed out of the soil like small warnings. Part of the land would disappear, but not the way they intended, and not without his name finally entering the record.